I was always interested in this music from the time I was a kid around my father's record collection. There was a black student newspaper at Kent State University where I went called the Black Watch. And it was fairly new at the time because the whole idea of a Black Studies program was fairly new at that time anyway. I just found that to be a convenient vehicle to get started writing about the music. When I found out that, oh my gosh, you might be able to get some records or some tickets to events by writing, that became like a drug. It was like, oh my goodness, it gives me some access here to some things that I might not otherwise be able to afford. And I was already a new records junkie anyway, always hitting the shelves looking for the latest recordings, even commandeering people's cars. I didn't have a car at the time, but I would commandeer people's cars to drive to Cleveland to pick up the latest releases. Like I drove to Cleveland to get Bitches Brew when it first came out, because it didn't come to our record store in Kent until a couple of months after it hit Cleveland. Writing about this music has never been my way to make a living. Writing about this music has always been a part of what I do, and a very important part, because it's given me entree to a lot of different things. My dad was a lifetime newspaper man. He was a typographer at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which is still the largest daily paper in the state of Ohio. Through his connections, I actually had a couple of summer jobs at the Plain Dealer. After getting my degree, I came back and went to work for the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, because I had a degree in sociology. I was also very much interested in continuing my writing. So I started writing for various, what came to be referred to as alternative weeklies. And so I was writing about jazz, and I was getting around town and going to all the various concerts, starting to get that product coming in from the record companies. My father introduced me to the editor of the Friday magazine of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which was the Friday Arts and Entertainment Supplement. So the editor of the Friday magazine, a guy named Robert Roach, he decided that he wanted someone to write previews of jazz activities that were coming to town the following week after the Friday magazine came out. So I started writing previews of concert performances and also reviews. And that, of course, got me further entree to all the activities, not only in Cleveland, but in Northeast Ohio. So that was actually the first real opportunity to be paid to write about this music. Well, obviously, Randy Weston stands out first and foremost. It's because here's a jazz master who I've cultivated a true friendship with, a kinship, a brotherhood with, over the course of working on his book. And that, of course, took 9 years. So very close relationship with him. And, I had an opportunity to interview a lot of different people along the way at key points in their careers. Like Miles Davis. I interviewed Miles Davis during the time when he was just about to go on that mid-70s hiatus. I interviewed a lot. At that time when I started writing in the late 60s, early 70s, was the beginning of what was originally known as jazz rock. And then it became known as fusion and whatnot. And so I interviewed all of those cats. I mean, we're talking about Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Stanley Clarke, all the members of Return to Forever, Larry Coryell, Billy Cobham, all those guys. And I also interviewed some of the great acoustic masters too, like Sonny Rollins and like Max Roach, and just a whole raft of different artists. I've had a great opportunity to interview some real masters of this music, and that's been a real blessing. But currently, artist interviews, or what I've come to think of and refer to as the cult of personality, are not of the greatest interest to me unless we're talking about artists who are dealing with certain issues, or artists who have come together as part of a collective, or artists who have shown an exceptional business acumen in terms of how they market themselves and their product, or artists who are working in this whole new media and this social media atmosphere and developing new ways of reaching audience. And those kinds of things are really of interest to me. I'm not as interested anymore in interviewing artists about their latest record,
Right.
that's a big motivation for the magazines. I understand that, and I understand why, but that's not as motivating to me as these between the lines kinds of issues and these career development and audience development kinds of aspects. I'm working on a project now, which is an expansion of a series of dialogues that I've been having with African American music writers. It was called Ain't But a Few of Us, and it ran on my site, and it generated a good deal of interest to the point that I'm working on expanding it into a book project. I'm a presenter, and I have been presenting jazz concerts and festivals for going back to my days in Cleveland. And, life proceeded, and I wound up getting in arts administration and working first for Great Lakes Arts Alliance and then for Arts Midwest. Moved to Minneapolis, St. Paul eventually, lived there for several years, then moved to D.C. and moved to D.C. in order to run the National Jazz Service Organization. And then when I left National Jazz Service Organization, I decided I wanted to explore a variety of different options and, just see what interested me the most. And an opportunity came along to be the first artistic director of Tri-C Jazz Fest. They had never had one before for the first 17 years of the festival. So 17 years ago, I became artistic director of Tri-C Jazz Fest. And that was a project which was a year-long project, which involved various organizations around the country presenting jazz programs related to venues in their communities, which had been very important for the development of the music in those communities. A late writer friend of mine named David Jackson initially approached me about this idea, and we talked to a visionary woman named Mickey Shepard, who was at an organization called 651 Arts in Brooklyn. And she worked with us, and we developed a national coalition of performing arts organizations to present Lost Jazz Shrines programs during the course of this 1 year. One of those organizations was Tribeca Performing Arts Center in New York, Lower Manhattan. And the director there was brand new. But she liked this idea because she went to a meeting that Mickey Shepard had, and she liked this idea as a means of bringing a regular jazz presence to Tribeca Performing Arts Center. So she engaged me as the artistic director of what has become an ongoing series of programs at Tribeca, and we've also added a young artist series as well. So that kind of work is very rewarding to me because, when you're in this music we call jazz long enough, you're going to hear people moaning about various disparities. But to me, always, the biggest disparity is audience. The biggest issue for us who work in jazz is audience development. Because I've continued to teach courses, and I know from my teaching that I meet students all the time for whom the course that they take, the jazz course that I teach, it opens up a new world of music to them. I don't know how many times I've had them say, wow, I didn't even know this was out here. I didn't know anything about this music. Or I thought jazz was something else, something I didn't like until I took this course. So, you know, we have such a job to do as far as developing the audience for this music, because we aren't anywhere near the maximum audience for this music.